let it never be said that I don't read viewer comments. One viewer commented recently, "I'm low-key dreading the day you turn your sassy, astral, elven gaze on my son daddy Lathander, who has never done anything controversial ever." Well, Ontomancer, if you're listening, you asked for it. Lathander is generally considered a pretty decent sort. Definitely one of the goodest of the good gods. He's of neutral good alignment, so he doesn't have much of a philosophical preference for cosmic law or chaos. He just wants to do the right thing. And his dogma even emphasizes both that dogma itself isn't as important as doing the right thing, and that mores and traditions should be constantly reevaluated, which is honestly pretty cool. Tyr's church once hired assassins to eliminate anyone who doesn't worship Tyr, and also their entire families. Since if you don't worship the god of justice, surely you're not a just person. You must be an evil person. And do the unjust really deserve justice? And sure, they did this behind Tyr's back, and Tyr was furious when he found out about it, but the Forgotten Realms has never been afraid to take the stance that organized faith can and does sometimes stray from the divine inspiration. Even though their gods are right there, it's inevitable. Sune's church, for example, is said to be institutionally bigoted against the unattractive and disfigured. Helm's church eagerly crushes whole continents under the boots of violent colonial repression, and Timora's high priest, Daramos Lothair, used the time of troubles as an excuse to hoard wealth and amass titles and obnoxiously consolidate power to an extent that even his fellow fanatics grew disgusted with him. But Lathander's church has typically been, by Forgotten Realms standards, pretty chill. Strive always to aid to foster new hope, new ideas, and new prosperity for all humankind and its allies. Perfect thyself and guard ever against pride, for it is a sacred duty to foster new growth, nurture growing things, and work for rebirth and renewal. Be fertile in mind and body. Consider always the consequences of thine actions, so that the least effort may bring the greatest and best reward. Wherever you go, sow seeds of plant, tend the growing things you find, and plant seeds of hope, new ideas, and plans for a rosy future in the minds of all. Whenever possible, see each dawn. But whenever Lethander comes up in these sorts of discussions, there's always one particular skeleton in his closet that dogs him relentlessly, which someone did mention in response to Ontomancer's comment, namely, the Dawn Cataclysm. This is the reason that Helm, God of Guardians, kinda hates Lethander even to this day. What was the Dawn Cataclysm? The bard Joel explains in the 1997 novel Timora's Luck. Before the fall of Myth Draenor, there was a great war between the gods of Toril over who would be their leader. It was known as the Dawn Cataclysm because it was started by Lethander when he decided that he should be that leader. The 3rd edition sourcebook, Faiths and Pantheons, describes the Dawn Cataclysm as a catastrophe second only to the Time of Troubles, in which Lethander attempted to reshape the entire pantheon in his own image, and thereby triggered a major divine struggle. Lethander was, at the time, a sort of new kid on the block, at least in terms of prestige. It's unclear when Lethander appeared exactly, but the Netherese had their own sun god, Amaunator, who was starved following the fall of Netheril for lack of worshippers. Over the centuries, many theories have been put forward by late scholars as to what ultimate fate Amaunator meant. Some believe he was either absorbed into or became Lethander, others that he turned bitter and became Atar, and yet others assert that he turned his back on Faerun and entered the pantheon of the lands of Karator, or simply moved on to other crystal spheres. The truth is that with the loss of nearly all of his followers in Netheril after its fall, Amaunator began the long, arduous, and painful process of dying of neglect. After about a millennium, he did not have enough power left to maintain the keep of the Eternal Sun on Mechanus, and was ruthlessly exiled to the astral plane. His corpse now drifts with the endless astral tides, awaiting a day when some ambitious spirit may help him regain his once proud heritage. As Amaunator's sun set, Lethander's sun rose, fitting for the god of rebirth. The ranks of his faithful grew, and with great power came greater ambition. Who here has not seen a wrong and attempted to right it? Who here has not experienced unintended consequences from such efforts to help? Do such things mean that we should not proceed, should not take risks, should not try new things? As was revealed in the vision of the 10 Sons, we must always persevere through times of trouble, seeking the Morninglord's deliverance. But the implicit insights we can take from that vision are that deliverance comes through times of trouble, and that times of trouble result from new endeavors that change the present into a future that might be. Lethander sought a dangerous prize, to grasp the crown, sit the throne, and reign supreme as the glorious Emperor of the Dawn. When some gods refused to accept his rule, he chose violence, and perhaps predictably, blood-soaked chaos was the result. His ultimate failure resulted in the destruction of several deities and powerful outsiders, led to the collapse of a half-dozen theocracies, and presaged the fall of Myth-Draenor. In the throes of the turmoil, Myrdain, the goddess of reason and lover of Helm, was drowned by Umberlee, and for this the god of guardians has never forgiven the Morninglord. Ever wonder why Helm is such a sad boy? Now you know. Tyche, meanwhile, the goddess of fortune, was Lathander's lover at the time. She'd once been a part of the Greek pantheon, just as Meleki and Leviatar were once part of the Finnish pantheon, and like them, a decline in worship saw her migrate to Toril and set up shop there. But when this war erupted between gods, Tyche wanted no part of it, so she left her paramour rather than take sides. Sources seem to vary in their explanations to exactly why Tyche left. Some imply she was always a fickle, promiscuous temptress who was leading Lathander on and got bored of him when he became quote-unquote too serious. Some sources imply she was turned off by her beau's sudden eagerness to go to war and dislike an apparent lust for power. But whatever the case, it didn't end well for Lady Fate. Let's return to Joel, the bard's epic tale. Tyche wandered about the realms for some time. As she rested on a snow-capped mountain surveying the land all about her, a rosebud burst through the snow at her feet. The bud showed no signs of damage from the harsh setting in which it had grown. It was just on the verge of opening its petals and promised to be perfect in every way. Because of the circumstance of the rose's appearance, Tyche took it to be an overture of peace from Lathander. The goddess of luck reached down to pluck the rose, but the stem wouldn't break. Tyche yanked harder, only to be rewarded by thorns in her fingers. She cursed the young blossom with bad luck, and the stem snapped right off. Annoyed that the gift had proved so difficult, Tyche decided to keep Lathander waiting a while longer. She continued wandering about the realms, with the rose fastened in her hair above her ear. The rose, however, was not an offering from Lethander, but a trap set by Moander, the Darkbringer, god of decay. The rose blossomed, and its pollen drifted into her ear, where it began to rot her from the inside out. Thus, the Darkbringer hoped to gain for himself Tyche's power over luck. When Tyche returned to her home in the Outer Plains, Selûne, goddess of the moon, was there waiting to speak with her. Selûne was instantly aware of the corruption eating away at her friend. Without a moment's hesitation, she lashed out, said another voice, with a bolt of purifying light that split Tyche down the center of her rotting core. All that was good and kind in Tyche coalesced into a single form and stepped out from Tyche's rotting corpse. That was Tamora. I brought her forth from the tragedy of Tyche's corruption, and she possessed power over good fortune. The speaker appeared to be an elderly matron with long black hair streaked with silver. The other goddess to coalesce from the remains of Tyche's essence was, of course, Bishaba, the maid of misfortune and the goddess of bad luck. The newborn twin goddesses of fortune immediately attacked one another and had to be pulled apart by bystanders. Both survived and both persist into the present day of the Forgotten Realms setting. Because he is the god of new beginnings, the Morninglord rewards those who take risks and try new ventures. All new endeavors worth attempting carry with them the risk of failure, but the lessons learned from such inevitable failures allow us to grow. Lethander, of course, blames himself for the loss of his beloved Tyche, but he also felt, even long after, that his essential idea of reshaping the Pantheon in his image was fundamentally a solid one. Who wouldn't want to be ruled over by him? Only evildoers. Any person of virtue would surely rejoice at the chance to place themselves at the mercy of his every whim. It was just the execution that was lacking, and many sources suggest he is gearing up for a Dawn Cataclysm Round 2. No doubt the Vigilant One would be chagrined to learn that Lathander has, since the time of troubles, been working on some of the incantations and machinations that brought about the catastrophes so long ago. Ogma, Shantea, and Lyra know of Lathander's plans, but so far each has remained silent. With the return of Bane, many progressive deities believe that direct action must be taken to destroy evil once and for all, and that no unintended consequences of Lathander's plans could be as threatening to the world as simply standing by and doing nothing. Some might say this is a teeny, tiny bit of a red flag. Within the last year, Lathander's most trusted servants have received word of their deity's secret plan. The Dawnbringers refer to a mysterious event known as the Deliverance, which will have important consequences for the world, especially for those who are antithetical to Lathanderian beliefs. No mortal knows the details of the Deliverance, but the prospect of the Morninglord taking a more active role in the affairs of Toril fills his already excitable worshippers with an almost unsettling glee. They've initiated an aggressive proselytizing effort to encourage others to join their church before it is too late. Sounds great. But to give the devil his due, Lethander is a capital G good guy. He just wants to get rid of the capital B bad guys. The state of things in realm space is lousy. The way things work now is cruel and unjust. And as we've heard in an earlier video, Ao the Overgod is an overjerk. So maybe someone should tear it all down and right the wrongs inherent in the system, right? Lathander really does care about the people of the world. He wants folk to be safe and happy and prosperous. And to his credit, he resists being held back by a very self-serving system of divinity that typically crushes any attempts at reform. He's all about the greater good. Here's the rub. It's heavily implied that while the Morninglord's heart is in the right place, he's sort of a fuckboy himbo. A little bit shallow and nowhere near as wise as he thinks he is. He's the divine equivalent of the classic player character archetype that puts all their points into charisma and none into wisdom. Incapable of making a good plan, and more than capable of dragging everyone else into your bad one. Lethander has a reputation for being sometimes overly enthusiastic, slightly vain, and given to excesses, all flaws very common among the young. He is also eternally optimistic and doggedly perseverant. His alliance with Shantaea serves them both well, since his interests in birth, nurture, and vibrant life dovetail well with her portfolio. The churches of Shantaea and Lethander have only grown closer since the time of troubles, and the rumor holds that Lethander has been courting the favor of the Earth Mother romantically as well as politically. And those flaws, those hairline cracks in the facade, are where this dawn is gonna get dark. Shantaea put his fingertips on the Morninglord's chest to keep him from embracing her closer. Lethander, it's planting season. You know that I must tend this field to ensure the fecundity of the realms. What'll it matter if the crop's a day late? Lethander whispered. He tilted his head and pressed his lips to the curve of her throat. Shantaea smiled, but when the god began pulling her backward through the field, she broke away abruptly. Lethander, she reprimanded her companion sharply. If you do not stop churning the field with your feet, there will be crop failure in Halrua this season. They can buy grain from Alm. It'll teach the Wizard Kingdom something about cooperation, Lethander said glibly. Come with me, Shantaea. The growing season is very lovely, but it comes every year. The birth of a new universe, on the other hand, is not only beautiful, but also rare. Shantaea sighed with exasperation. Lethander, you might as well just tell the sun to hold off rising in the morning. My duties cannot wait. The last time I saw a new universe blossom, Lethander said sadly, Tyche was my companion. We lay on the back of a space whale and watched for a full year as the crystal spheres grew larger and spread apart, and the stars inside them flickered to life and brightened. Tyche always did have too much time to fritter away, Shantaea muttered, scattering a handful of seed in the furrow before her. I'm sorry, Lethander, but my work is more important. I want to share this with someone, Lethander insisted stubbornly. Well, Tyche is gone, and I am busy. You'll have to find someone else. Why don't you seek out Tyche's daughters, Bishaba or Tamora? Perhaps one of them has time to lie on the back of a space whale. Neither child is the same as her dam, Lethander complained. There was the faintest hint of a whine in his voice. But you are the same as ever, Lethander, Shantaea cried, throwing her arms up in a gesture of annoyance. You're always looking for beginnings. Some of us have tasks that must be finished. Go, let me complete my planting in peace. Lethander's face darkened like an eclipsed sun. As you wish, he retorted hotly, and with that he spun around and flew quickly away in the direction he'd come, disappearing beyond the distant horizon. There were black scorch marks where his feet had last touched the field. Halrua's harvest would be poor this year. Shantaea sighed and turned back to her task. In the novel Tamora's Luck, the third novel in the multi-setting Lost Gods trilogy, Lethander is one of the main characters, so we get a good look at what he's like as a person rather than as an impersonal divine presence or plot device. And what is Lethander like? Well, he's petulant and petty, he can't keep his hands off of Shantaea, even when she's clearly not into it. He's sentimental, he reminisces about his ex-partner to his current paramour, he pouts when he doesn't get what he wants. When the Earth Mother rebuffs his advances, he storms off and ruins the harvest of an entire region of southern Faerun out of apathy and spite. A whole kingdom will suffer through a lean season because a busy goddess wouldn't give a stroppy sunboy the attention he thinks he deserves. Which seems, at first glance, entirely counter to his theology, to the point where you might worry this novel is a bit of a character assassination. Lethander's whole deal is alleviating the suffering of the little guy. Kindness, humility, positivity, thinking through the consequences of your actions, never letting stricture and sophistry get in the way of doing right. But as we see in Tamora's Luck, it's the essential tragedy of the Morninglord that he can't live up to his own lofty ideals. He's too personally flawed, too selfish, too comfortable with his own inherent righteousness. He lacks the good sense that typically comes with maturity, which is perhaps part and parcel of his divine portfolio. Being the god of beginnings, of youth, is a double-edged sword that traps him in a state of crappy adolescence forever. But he does take Shantaea's advice, and after making his exit, he goes off to play with Tamora and Bishaba instead. Wait, Lethander, no! Lady Tamora, Lady Bishaba, welcome to Elysium, Lethander said with a low bow. Please forgive me for your abduction and imprisonment, but it is for a good cause, I assure you. Yeah, this shocked me too. I saw Ontomancer's comment, and I thought I'd cook up a quick short on the Dawn Cataclysm as an ancient mistake that Lathander learned from. And then... this. What are you doing, Lethander? Lethander, Tamora said with horror. Tyche is dead. You can't mean you're going to try and resurrect her. No, Lady Tamora, Tyche is not dead. She lives in you and your sister, and when the two of you are fused into one with the aid of this machine and the power of our magic, Tyche will be whole again. Toril will remain at peace, and Kryn will not be disturbed by our troubles. But only at our expense, Tamora declared. Lethander, I am as happy as I am. I do not want to be united with Beshaba. You have no right to force this upon us. So, how did we get here? Well, sometime after parting with Shantea, Lethander was visited by a new friend called Syrian of the Flowing Flame. If you're familiar with the Dragonlance setting, then yes, that's Syrian, a neutral god from the world of Kryn. Syrian tells Lethander that a terrible calamity is about to result from the conflict between the churches of Tamora and Beshaba. This would cause devastating wars to consume Faerun, upsetting the balance of good and evil, and triggering an exodus of evil from Toril to Kryn, which would in turn precipitate disaster there. If this seems a bit contrived, then hold that thought. Syrian tells Lethander that there's only one way to avert this terrible calamity. Tamora and Beshaba must be rejoined. Only Tyche, Lathander's old flame, can save both of their worlds, and Syrian says he can bring her back. Wouldn't that be nice, Lethander? For this purpose, Syrian intends to use a Magitech device known as a fusion chamber, which seems to have been invented by the Tinker Gnomes of Kryn for the purpose of uncracking eggs. What does a fusion chamber do? Finder asked. Well, when the gnomes make scrambled eggs for a large group of people, Emilio explained, they beat up all the eggs with a little milk and salt and pepper, and then they cook the eggs, but there's always leftover egg mixture. They pour the leftover egg mixture into a fusion chamber, and the fusion chamber puts the eggs back into their shells so that the gnomes can use them again later. I'm not sure what happens to the milk and salt and pepper. I'm not sure the gnomes know either. Tamora and Beshaba, of course, don't want to be fused against their will. Heck, they hate each other and find the idea of being forcibly smashed together abhorrent. But Lethander says that he doesn't care. Consent is irrelevant. He's going to violate their bodies and souls and their essence anyway. It will, of course, be horribly, excruciatingly, agonizingly painful. But it's for the greater good, ladies. The greater good. And just as a happy coincidence, he'll get his girlfriend back. Lethander has needs. And regrets. Though, isn't he already dating Shantea? Is he just going to abandon her once he gets Tyche back? Are all the gods poly by default? In any case, he continues to hold court about how little he respects their consent. The Morninglord looked away from Tamora and stared off into space with a haunted look. An ancient wrong will be righted by this plan, he said. Tyche was a great goddess. She should never have been destroyed. To this day, I blame myself for that tragedy. Had I not started the Dawn Cataclysm, Moander might never have corrupted Tyche, and she would yet live. It's a little late to think of that now, Beshaba said accusingly. You tried to claim power that was not yours. Only a fool would be surprised that the other gods of Faerun chose to war against you. By the time the Dawn Cataclysm ended, your allies had suffered more losses than the enemies you hoped to contain in your bid for leadership. You may come to regret this move as well, Tamora warned. I'm sorry you are unwilling, my lady, Lethander said, but believe me, this is for the greater good. It will serve both Toril and Kryn, as well as restore Tyche. I'm sorry you're unwilling? Come on, that is unbelievably evil. This is some I have you now, my pretty, creepy villain monologue energy. Beshaba, who gets to be an absolute queen in this scene, is having none of it. She accuses Lethander of going through with the plan purely to assuage his own guilt for getting Tyche killed. Beshaba growled, You're a complete fool, Lethander. It's no wonder the others wouldn't accept your leadership, nor that Tyche left you. Soon, Lady Beshaba, the Morninglord replied softly, you will be free from the spite and malice that enslaves your heart. You will become happier and more beloved than you have ever been. Although I realize you would never agree, you, even more than Lady Tamora, should appreciate what I am about to do for you. Hear me, Lethander, Beshaba vowed. If any part of me truly remains in Tyche, she will claw out your eyes the first chance she gets. The god Finder Wyverspur eventually catches on to Lathander's plan and comes to his realm to stop him. But the Morninglord is still in villain mode and monologues about how, you cannot stop my evil plans, mwahaha. So Finder tries to appeal to his better nature. I'm not leaving without Tamora. You cannot hope to defeat my plan, Lethander said. I am far, far more powerful than you. I need only hold you off until Selûne grows suspicious, Finder said. Lathander glowered at the younger god. You cannot stop me, he said. Did you think that if you succeeded, Selûne would forgive you? Finder asked. That because she was friends with Tyche, she'd be pleased that you sacrificed Tamora? Once it is done, Selûne will have no choice but to accept it, Lathander argued. If you thought your cause was truly just, you wouldn't be reluctant for the Moon Maiden to know what you intended, Finder retorted. But Lathander is still entirely convinced that he's right and they're wrong. The twin goddesses must be sacrificed, for the greater good. But the paladin, Hori Harrowslau, of the Lathanderite Order of the Aster, is also here, and she too attempts to make an argument that, this is kind of super messed up, right? But Lathander, who, may I remind you, is all about how doing the right thing is more important than adhering to dogma, shuts her down and makes her cry. Lee was right behind the god. My lord, she whispered to Lathander, must you do this? How can it be right if it must be done without the knowledge of your allies? I require your silence now, paladin, Lathander said warningly. But the Morninglord glared at Holly as if she were a creature from the abyss. I will not tolerate disobedience, he said with a chill in his voice that could freeze the sun. The paladin collapsed to the floor, sobbing, unable to face her god's wrath. Lathander held up the blue crystal sphere and began chanting Tyche's name. Simultaneous shrieks of "No!" came from inside the fusion chamber as Bishaba and Tamora felt their souls begin to merge against their wills. There is a twist, however. This Syrian of the Flowing Flame is an imposter! Dun dun dun! It was Yaktu's Vim all along, the son and successor of the late god of tyranny, Bane. In the process of merging the two goddesses together, he was planning to consume them both and absorb the portfolios of fate and fortune, weal and woe, which would strengthen his hand substantially. And as a bonus, it'd be all Lathander's fault. A masterful coup for Team Evil. Except, when he dramatically reveals his true form and goes to seize the power for himself, he trips over a black cat and gets dunked on. While the aggrieved goddess of bad luck may be confined, she's still right there. With the true villain foiled and the justification for non-consensually merging Tamora and Bishaba together revealed to be a fabricated yarn, Lathander, doesn't care? It doesn't matter that it was all a lie. He's on the cusp of getting his girlfriend back, so he orders his paladin, Holly, to return an important component so they can proceed. And she doesn't do that. She lets the goddesses out instead. So knowing this isn't really Syrian doesn't change your mind? Emilio asked Lathander with surprise. Even though he's an evil god who lied to you? Lathander glared at the Kender, but his face grew thoughtful. His head snapped around just in time to see Holly toss Tyche's power key into the fusion chamber. Lathander's eyes widened in surprise. In a shocked voice, he demanded of his paladin, What have you done? Now Tamora and Bishaba can use Tyche's power key to escape the fusion chamber, Holly explained. What compels you to disobey me? Lathander asked in an amazed tone. How dare you risk falling from my grace? Tears flowed freely from Holly's eyes. It would be evil to join the goddesses against their will, my lord, she said. So Lathander is saved from doing something truly horrific, something that he would probably regret later, by his own paladin, Holly, who is, in the end, a vastly more mature and virtuous person than he is. Then, the machine activates anyway, and we get a glimpse of what Lathander's going ahead with the plan would have entailed. The goddesses' bodies grew translucent and fluid like melting wax. Their torsos joined, then merged, until there was only one torso between the two of them. They had become a misshapen creature with 4 arms and legs, struggling against the bonds of the chaos matter, and 2 heads screaming in rage and pain. But while Lathander just sort of stands around helplessly and insists there's no way to stop the process, our heroes find a solution that involves causing the machine to explode, and everyone manages to flee just in time before a whole region of Elysium is turned into a smoking crater. And that's the climax over. In the aftermath, Lathander forgives Holly for her disobedience. So, how do we feel about our son daddy now? Good guy? At that moment, Bishaba suddenly appeared in front of Lathander. I've teleported here to share my gift with you, Lethander, she said, and gave him a quick kiss on the mouth. Then the Maid of Misfortune vanished again. The Morninglord looked mildly alarmed. I don't suppose you'd care to balance out Bishaba's ill luck with a kiss of your own, he asked Lady Luck. Tamora stepped back and pointed at Holly. You were blessed with far more than your share of luck the day this girl entered your service, she informed him. Oh, hey, I hope everybody enjoyed this little venture into Lethander, and my patrons and YouTube members should be showing up on screen right about now. Thank you very much for supporting the channel, and I'll see you all in the next one. It's probably going to be about Corellon.